Today I want to come here and discuss one of the most undervalued and quite frankly under-discussed parts of the creative process. One of the most essential things that I feel doesn't get discussed nearly enough, and that's sort of the virtue of not marrying your own ideas, being fluid, right, in the creative process. I think that we've talked at length already about growing through your own art, right? In this series of videos I'm doing of kind of rebuilding the very introductory steps of getting into creation, we've talked at length about this, the idea of growing, letting your art kind of take you where it wants to, and so on, right? I think, though, part of that we have not kind of discussed, and is an inference of that, but an undervalued inference at that, is the idea of letting your art grow alongside you, right? Few times is it going to be where you are coming up with an idea of what to do and how to do it, and you do it the first time and it's perfect and it's great and you have a masterpiece. Not at all, right? So much of the creative process is doing something, going in, it doesn't really work, iterating, reiterating, actually not to turn this into something more than it's trying to be, this video that is, but I feel that the idea of iterating and coming up with one idea and going doesn't work, move on, all that, I unironically just feel like that's one of the most under discussed ideas in life, right? Because I feel like the way you go through so much of even the schooling system is you learn all this stuff and you go on the test and you gotta strike it once and get it right on the test. When so much of actually excelling outside of that system, outside of schooling and stuff like that, is I'm gonna put something out that's kind of ass right now, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, right? And then coming back a while later and going okay, I can improve it here, I can improve it there. That's way more of what everyday life is than ever trying to get something right the first time. Actually, I feel like usually the person that has a half answer first is the one that's gonna win, right? And art is the same way, where you're never trying to get something right the first time you hit it. There are artists that do function like that, right? 100%. I would argue that even inside that function, there's a lot of iteration. I find that personally, out of the people I've encountered in my own life, at least, I'm not going to say I've ever met Picasso, he's not around with us anymore, but out of the people I've encountered in my own life, I've experienced there are primarily two types of people in the way they create, right? People that do volume. I'm one of these people. You can see it directly in this series. Every day, throw out whatever you come up with, blah, 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 build those things into long-term projects, right? I think it's not inaccurate to say that the art of paint and talk of these videos that I do here is not so much the individual canvases I come up with, but those canvases as a whole and how they develop over time, right? Just doing again and again and again until sometimes something good comes out of it. Sometimes it's that's a pretty cool thing. Most of the time that's not the case, but it doesn't matter. It's just about volume, right? And the other kind is people who do one thing and just keep working on that one thing, perfecting every element of it until they're satisfied with it, right? As I said, I'm the former. I'm 100% the former. I hate editing things. I'm terrible at it. I don't know how to, look at things and go this could be better here, there, and this other place. I'm terrible at that, right? So I'm not the latter at all. However, I'm not gonna dismiss either of these ways. I think that you could make arguments that throughout history, certain types of artists have been different things, definitely in different mediums. You need to be if you're a director, you need to be great at coming up with one idea and just, hammering down that idea until you have that final product of a film. Because films are so big budget, you can't just keep going and going on it, right? You can't make 100 films and hope one hits. You're lucky if you get 10 in your whole career. So, there's virtues depending on medium, but largely I think both these are equally valid for coming out with great ideas, right? In both cases, though, something that's extremely important is not marrying your ideas at all, right? In very different ways, this importance takes root, right? So in the first way, of the way that I create art, of just throwing stuff out there 24/7, seeing what's good, seeing what you like, right? The idea of marrying your ideas comes in extremely instrumental in this process, right? Because you need to be able to move on, right away. By the time this painting is done, I need to be ready to just throw up the next painting, because that's exactly what's gonna happen. Tomorrow, I'm gonna come back in here, and I'm going to, just dropped all the paints, but I got the one I was looking for. You couldn't see that? Okay, so this is what just happened here. I was trying to drag this out like, so it was more casual, like I wasn't trying to make it a big deal, and then I just threw it all over the floor. So that happened, we're gonna move on, we're gonna keep this conversation going. That was terrible. But back to marrying your ideas. In that case, you need to be ready to just keep moving through ideas, right? And you can't get overly attached to one singular idea. I think an important part of this process then is not seeing so much how your ideas develop or which ideas are good or bad, but rather seeing how the overall output you have develops, right? It's not so much being like, yesterday I thought of X, today I'm thinking of Y, maybe tomorrow will be Z. It's not a predictive idea. It's more looking back and going, this is sort of the direction things are moving, right? And I think that's extremely important. I think, again, this is a part of the artistic process that's so underrated. It's also underrated, I feel, because it's something you can't really teach, right? Like, we can discuss it, and I think it's great to discuss it, even though it's something, like, you're not watching this video right now. I'm gonna end this video going, oh my God, I understand how to not marry my ideas now. There's no way to teach that. It's a personal thing of just like understanding it. However, I feel like it's one of those parts of the artistic process that's not discussed enough, therefore not understood that it's supposed to happen enough. Like, I've had friends who maybe they get into making stuff and they're like, oh, like, you know, whatever I think I have a good idea, it ends up being trash, right? And they view that as a mark of them being a bad artist, when it's actually just a mark of them growing. And perhaps if it was discussed in that light instead, they would have just embraced that and made amazing art because of it, right? And I think that's why it's so important to discuss things like this. Because when we don't discuss them and people think it's unique and they think it's just them, they get in their head about a lot of these things that are very normal and like things that just have to occur, right? Now, going to the second type of creator, the person that kind of makes one thing and really just hones in on it, keeps working on it. In that process, it's important not to marry your ideas, because when you're doing this, you need to be able to abandon the first version of something. This is actually part of the reason I'm so bad at editing, because I'm not very good at, I marry my ideas too much when I work in that regard, right? The person who needs to sit and edit and hammer out a perfect project, what they need to be able to do is look at their first iteration of it and go, could be better here, 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 and be comfortable with looking at the 10th iteration and realizing it has nothing to do with the original vision, but it is still better. This is something I suck at, but is instrumental to that type of creating, which is part of the reason why I feel that I'm so much more suited to be somebody who puts out a ton of volume rather than somebody who is going to ever hammer in a piece and work really hard on it. As much as I love that idea, I feel like we romanticize that idea so much. I feel like that's like the prime idea of a creative to society, is like somebody who sits alone in a room and is like, I'm gonna come up with something insane today. And they do, and it's the best thing ever. Like, I feel like that's so much of how we view creating, when they couldn't be further from the truth for many people. Like, so much of it is just coming out with like, oh, this is what I thought of today. This is what I'll think of tomorrow. You know, this is what, you know, looking at how you progress over time. But I think also along with this, there's another skill that's even more undervalued, and that's the ability to have a lot to pull from, right? Because whether you're in the camp of putting out, you know, you're the type of creator who does just a new thing every day and you just keep moving, or you're the type of creator that just comes up with one thing and hammers it home. Either way, you need to have a large array of things you can pull from and reference from. These things can be very explicit, like it could literally be, I have a library of 1 million textures on my computer, and I know which one of these textures to use in which scenario. It could be something like that. It could be way more simple than that, and something more akin to, you know, I have a bunch of different concepts that I want to try, and I'm going to keep trying them until I feel like one sticks, right? It could be so many different ways, but having a large well of inspiration and different ideas to pull from is super important. I mean, this is why so many people are into like the whole idea of like mood boarding intensely, right? Because they love having these mood boards to reference and pull new ideas from. I've never been much of a person to mood board, outside of like doing it for clients in the graphic design space. I actually don't mood board anything ever. I don't know why, I just find it kind of a tedious process, but it's extremely, you know, you can't deny it's extremely valuable for some people, and it really works well to help them have ideas to pull from and to reference, right? Because understanding the ethos around what you're creating helps you iterate in ways that will always feel central and core to whatever project you're working on. Once again, I feel like this is something that's not taught in schools. Not that mood boarding is not taught. I actually think mood boarding is taught, if I'm not mistaken. But the idea of having a large well of inspiration to pull from, I don't think is taught too much because, like, again, school works and projects. Like, the way we learn art works so often just in projects. Like, you're gonna learn this technique, you're gonna use it on this painting, you're gonna see how good you are using it, right? This is part of the reason I never loved the artistic education I got, because I was like, you know, there's so much, it's so much more to do than that, right? But the point remains that when you're creating outside of any sort of regimented environment, so much of it's coming up with whatever you want to come up with, whenever you want to come up with it. And to do that and to produce good stuff, you need to be able to move on from your ideas, move, you know, through them, not marry any of them, and have a large library of things to try on these different ideas as you move from idea to idea. I mean, this is why, like, I feel this is why there's kind of a connotation that you can't be a good artist till you're older. This is something this is a idea that I don't like at all. I think that you can be a good artist at any age. I feel like 5-year-old probably come up with some awesome stuff sometimes that we just don't give them a chance to say this is great, you know. But I think part of the reason that we do have this idea is because so much of artistry is having such a large bevy of things to pull from in what you're creating, right? So much of it is having this large library of experiences to pull from with ideation, textures to pull from, you know, things you've seen over the years. And it's hard to do that when you haven't seen as much, right? Which is why I think that, like, collecting, documenting, however it happens. I mean, like, I know, you know, this is kind of a abstract example. Like, Stephen King doesn't write anything down because he thinks the idea probably wasn't that good if he doesn't remember it. Maybe you're like that, where, like, you won't write anything down because you only want the best of the best ideas to really be the ones you end up using. That's great, that's fine. So you might write everything down. You know, it could be anything. I don't have a strict process for myself, but it's, you know, coming up with a large library of ideas to pull from as you move from idea to idea and letting the art grow in itself, essential. So that's what I wanted to come talk about here today. This is the painting. Don't really know what's going on here. Like, I guess in a way, this actually works better than anything else I've ever made at being, because I really love surrealist art, like art where you, not surrealist in a strict definition of like art from that era exactly, but art where you're just like, it kind of feels dreamlike, you don't really know 100% what's going on, and I've always loved that style. And I've kind of tried to do it, like I tried to do it with the, I think it was 3 days ago now, the circle, the cube, and the pyramid. And I've tried it a couple times here, and I feel this is the first time I've actually nailed it, because I don't know what I'm looking at here, but I also hate that. Like, I also don't like it, you know, because of that same reason. But I don't know, yeah. So, this will be up on the Instagram and the TikTok, go check it out over there. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This has been Paint Talk episode 248. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.